trying to get it in my app, and I don't know my login. I can't seem to find it.
It messes me up for a good 2 weeks.
And then these apps decide what is good for you. Like, we're no longer taking your email address for your safety. Okay, let me decide what I feel is safe.
Exactly.
I'll decide what I want to be stolen, what I don't want to be stolen.
Who wants to be stoned to what? That's part of the conversation I caught.
Stolen.
Oh, stolen, stoled.
Stole the. All right. Knock, knock, who's there?
There it goes, man.
Welcome back, Cotter. What?
Cotter.
Welcome back, Cotter. What?
Well, as long as you're bringing the meeting to order, I got something I need to ask.
Okay. I don't feel like it's in order anymore. I feel like it's out of order.
Is it possible to bring back the easement conversation after we finish the methodology? Only because I have a thing that I saw in the code that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention about the easements.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be
Okay.
discussed.
Okay.
Since we're talking easements, if that's possible.
Okay. All right, so we're going to get.
I thought he was going to backhand me or
Got
something.
paper. All right, so we're going to get started. The police are looking at me now.
He's threatening me not.
All right, so to get back to business here, revisions to Northport Road and Drainage District methodology. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
This is a follow-up to the workshop we had on January 7th. Commission asked for us to provide some additional items. So with that, we have our consultant back here as well as the Department of Public Works. So I'll let them just go into the details.
Thank you, City Manager. For the record, Julian Abelia, Public Works Director. With me today, we have Monica Bramble, Assistant Public Works Director, Chuck Speak, Operations and Maintenance Manager, Mr. Eric Van Molson, Principal at Stantec, Patrick Luce, Consultant with Stantec, and Morgan Broche, Consultant with Stantec. At this time, Mr. Van Molson will come up and provide a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. Members of the Commission, once again, it's a pleasure to be here. Eric Van Malsen from Stantec, and as I already introduced, my colleagues with me to help answer any of the detailed questions as we go into this. I'm going to walk through the presentation, and I'd ask that you absorb the information and package your questions at the end, because the question may already be answered at the time of the presentation. So go right into it. Today we're talking about the Road and Drainage District Assessment, and this is the second workshop we've had over this course of the decision-making process. So we're going to go over the purpose of this presentation, a little bit of background, where we come from to get here, a review of your current methodology, a presentation of the options and directions we could go with the road and drainage assessment methods, what the cost components that drive the rates and data of each option, what the property impacts will be, and by that we mean what particular types of properties we'll be paying now versus under the current under the options that we're going to discuss, and then open it up for discussions for questions and answers. As a brief background, back in January on the 7th, we had a workshop to discuss the potential modifications to the Road and Drainage District Assessment methodology. We went through a few different options, and this presentation will review the impacts to your property owners and the rates themselves of the potential assessment structure modifications that were agreed upon by the Commission at the time in January. By the end of this workshop, the Commission by the end of that workshop, the Commission provided staff with the following consensus of the items. Continue using the existing ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers, trip generation manual for the road methodology. This is the underpinning data point that we use to allocate the costs of the road components to all the different property types. We were guided to keep the current methodology overall for the drainage component, to absorb the mowing services within the road and drainage services, recognizing that the benefit or the service provided for these mowing components is really used to benefit the road and drainage systems in terms of visibility and safety on the roadways and conveyance of water flow on the drainage component. So the concept of absorbing the mowing services in terms of the benefit criteria that we need to follow for assessment methodologies was well founded by our consideration of absorbing it into the road and drainage fees. And then the last recommendation that the commission provided us direction for was to consolidate the administrative charges. Currently, there are administrative components within mowing, road, and drainage, and we've opted with the direction of the commission to allocate just the administrative services that can be billed equal per parcel, no matter the size or component or density of that parcel. Just those services that staff has allocated that are relative to customer billing and the collection of the assessments in general. So there'd be one administrative component rather than 3 different ones for the services. This is going to be a little bit of saying it all over again, but the options as expanded from that last slide are, of course, to consolidate the administrative charges in the road, drainage, and mowing assessment structure and develop one admin charge that encompasses all the administrative expenses that apply to all parcels on an equal basis. So I want to keep coming back to that. The costs that we're putting into the administrative charge do not vary by the size or use of that parcel. It is just simply the cost the same for the city to answer a call about a billing from a single-family home than it does from an apartment complex. Those kind of costs, which could be allocated equally per parcel, are included into the administrative charge. And then here are the one of the following methodologies to address the mowing services. Absorb mowing services into the road and drainage assessment. This is the primary differentiating option that we talked about in this last go-around with the workshop that we've had in January. The identification of benefit, which is very important for non-ad valorem assessments. The concept of why you are charging for these things must be tied to a direct benefit to the individual parcels that you're charging to. So the benefit of the road components for mowing is to allow for a clear line of sight for traffic safety, road signs, and hazards. In other words, you are mowing these parcels to provide this benefit for the road component of these services. You're also mowing these parcels to provide a benefit for the drainage system. Mowing these parcels improves the drainage network hydraulic functionality, allows water to flow more efficiently through the different components of the drainage system. That is why you are mowing these parcels, and the concept for charging all parcels, in other words, all parcels benefiting from that component of the service, is why you would absorb those mowing costs into the road and drainage systems. The other options you have before you for the mowing component is to retain the mowing charge of just vacant parcels, but assessed by linear feet of frontage. So a parcel that has much more room to mow on the street line would pay more than a parcel with a lot less to mow. Your other option is to retain as it is currently done, which is simply one charge per parcel for vacant parcels, no matter the size or structure of the parcel. Those are your 3 options for the mowing components, and we're going to get into the impacts of those here in just a minute. So your current assessment structure has multiple fees for the 3 different categories of the assessments. You have your roads assessment, which is assessed currently on an administrative charge, a base roads, and enhanced roads, depending on who and how are benefited by those properties. It is allocated to your properties based upon trip generation rates to set an equivalent unit for all properties to compare to one another. Your drainage assessment is assessed on 4 components: the administrative charge, primary, secondary, and tertiary, and they are allocated to all the parcels on an acreage basis. So a larger parcel does pay more for the drainage components than a smaller parcel. Your mowing charges are, of course, right now a separate component, a separate fee to vacant parcels that the city mows, and it is assessed on an administrative charge and a charge based upon the right-of-way on a per parcel basis. And as you saw on that previous slide, that's the current way of doing it, and it is still an option. You could just keep going with the per parcel mowing component as its own fee, or we can assess it on a linear feet area or absorb it into the other components, which we're going to look at just right now. So we have 3 primary components as we see for the potential assessment structures. Of course, the admin charge would be its standalone charge for administrative services, and then you have the roads and then drainage components. Option 1 for mowing would be to distribute the mowing costs into the road and drainage functions as previously discussed. So you can see in our great animations that those mowing costs are now components of the roads and drainage. Thank my excellent colleagues over here for their great skills. Option 2, as you can see the dashed line, charge for mowing by the increment of linear feet of front footage on these parcels. As said before, this would allow you to charge a larger parcel that requires more mowing a higher dollar fee than a smaller parcel that has less mowing requirements. Or going by the current structure, which of course would have less shift and change in terms of impacts to who pays what, is by continuing to charge mowing by parcel. So our three options, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail on the cost components and the impacts, are laid out here right now, and they of course primarily concern how the city wishes to handle the mowing component of the assessment charge. This graph that you're going to see right here lays out the actual costs for each of these different fees. Option one, of course, is to include all of the administrative costs or components on a per parcel basis or a per bill basis, and any of the different options for the mowing components would have the same adjustment for the administrative charge. And working with your staff, we've identified $260,000 approximately of administrative costs that would be allocated on a per bill basis. You can see now that your current dollars over there on the left contains administrative costs, but you're also going to see the right there where you could see in the grays your roads costs, the reallocation of these costs into the different cost pools was also an exercise we worked through with your staff. You have a current set of allocations that were based on the prior studies that says, here's how much our budget goes towards the different functions of roads, administrative, drainage, and mowing. We've reallocated those costs with the most current data available and split them into the three different options. You can see that on option one, the cost for roads is a bit greater than option 2 and 3, and that's because the mowing service is now a function of that roads cost, and therefore it is actually a larger cost pool, but just because that mowing cost is absorbed in that component. Same with the drainage component. In that option 1, you can see now it's a larger cost pool than the option 2 and 3 because it has the mowing costs within the drainage component itself. But obviously option 2 and 3, the only differences are how you assess the mowing components, either by linear foot or by parcel. The cost allocation does not change between those two. And then that's our adding the mowing costs onto the total. So at the top of all four graphs, you can see it's about the same amount of costs. The only difference being in option 1, that green area of the mowing cost of approximately $2.4 million is allocated between the road and drainage functions. It should be pointed out that under option 1, it has been identified by your staff a significant need for enhancements of level of service to provide the mowing function or the level of service for mowing necessary to justify this reallocation of cost to all parcels. If we're going to say that the mowing is here to benefit all parcels within the city for these reasons, line of sight, safety, and the road components, allowance of efficient drainage on the draining components, there's going to need to be some additional cost to make sure that that level of service is actually achieved citywide. So you can see there at the top, all the dollars with the exception of option 1 with that little bit of enhanced level of service are approximately the same. So the following tables, there's a lot of numbers on them, and I'm not going to dwell on each individual one. The overall takeaway of the shifts in cost burden between each function are better described on a few tables after these, but this provides you with examples of the various properties that we've come to you in multiple presentations here with the road and drainage assessment and also your fire assessment that says what are these properties paying now versus what they would be paying under the potential new assessments, and under, of course, under this presentation we have 3 options. So in that first column you'll see the description of the type of property. You have a vacant almost quarter-acre property, a developed single-family quarter-acre property, a smaller single-family property in Lakeside Plantation, a larger vacant property in the Northport Estates, a larger single-family home in the Northport Estates, a 5-acre large vacant property in the Estates, a almost 5-acre single-family home within the Estates, and a very small small parcel in the West Villages at the bottom. And the difference between each of these different properties depends on what they pay. You could see that the vacant properties under their current assessment would pay different components of the assessment or go up and down depending on the options chosen with how to distribute the mowing costs. And you can see across the board, allocating the mowing costs amongst all parcels does kind of lift the rising tide of most of these fees because those costs are now being shared amongst developed parcels. This second slide goes into small non-residential and multifamily parcels. You can see at the top two are is a commercial condo office. It's essentially a one-unit office condo. The one below that is a multi-unit residential property in Victoria Point. And then we have examples of 3 small commercial parcels with varying acreage and how they would pay under the different assessments components versus what they're currently paying now. We also have the large non-residential properties. These are your big box stores, Walmarts, the golf courses, and vacant large collector lots. Currently, some of the highest assessments within the city dollar-wise, currently what they're paying now in the fiscal year 19 assessment and what they would pay otherwise with the 3 options. So these are a lot of numbers to absorb, but this may help tell a little bit story. The next slide, I'm sorry. This particular slide just shows the actual rate components themselves compared to your current structure. So you can see under the existing structure, you have a admin fee under each of the 3 rate components: roads, drainage, and mowing. Under each of the options that we're providing you today, that administrative charge is now just a $3.55 per parcel bill, no matter the option, and the road, drainage, and mowing admin fees would go away altogether and just be absorbed into that one fee. The primary differences between the 3, of course, is that right-of-way mowing at the bottom, where you can see there is no right-of-way mowing charge under option 1 because the costs are now absorbed within those other fees for roads and drainage. And the option 2 shows a smaller fee because it is now assessed on a linear feet basis, so a smaller parcel will pay less than a larger parcel. Or option 3 shows the existing methodology essentially as that the road mowing costs would only be assessed per parcel, $57.21. So this does not provide you with bill impacts. Those were the prior slides. Once you apply these rate components to individual parcels, noting which individual parcel benefits by which service, they would pay either by a acreage basis for the drainage, by their trip generation units on the roads, and then a per parcel basis for the administrative charge, and then depending on the option, how that mowing is assessed. Option 1, which allocates the mowing costs to all of the properties that benefit from the service within the entire city between the road and drainage components, has a bill impact shift as shown in this graph. You can see the orange lines basically show where the biggest pools of change are between current bills and the proposed bills, and these are done in dollar increments. So you can see kind of in the middle there's approximately 37,000 vacant residential parcels under an acre that would see a decrease in their bills because right now they're paying that $50+ charge per parcel, even though they are receiving the same service as a large parcel that also gets mowed. It's all on a per parcel basis. But they're going to see the biggest break under option 1 because those costs are now being absorbed amongst all parcels. And you can see the biggest shift goes to about 21,000 improved residential parcels that are less than an acre. They would receive the $25 to $50 annual increase by absorbing those mowing functions. That's the biggest shift in where those costs go. You can see there's a scattering of smaller impacts there, but you can see the largest group is within those 2 bars. Option 2 provides for the mowing component to be assessed on a linear foot basis. So you can see the biggest benefactor of this adjustment would be about 27,000 vacant residential parcels with 80 linear front footage would receive a decrease in their overall bill by approximately 8% or between $15 and $10 decrease, while the increases would be on approximately 23,000 improved residential parcels for less than an acre. So that shift is more concentrated towards that 0 number in this option, but you can see still there's a big trade-off between certain types of properties between the $5 and $10 or $15 mark. Option 3, essentially keeping the structure as it is, the biggest change being the administrative charge, where all of your parcels for mowing would be assessed on a per parcel basis. So you can see the vast majority of parcels, almost 91% almost, would receive $0 to $5 change, essentially almost a bill neutral option. The major change for any bills would be just the reallocation of the costs between road, drainage, and mowing compared to what they're currently paying under the last study towards now, which has some slightly different adjustments of where the costs go between the major cost pools. So, just as a wrap up of everything we've discussed, our three options. One, and this is our recommended option, and also the option that we had the consensus for during the last meeting, was to absorb administrative charges into one charge, and for all mowing services to be absorbed in the road and drainage functions, recognizing that the benefit for that service is actually benefiting all parcels within the city. Option two, which is to simply address the admin charge and change the way you assess mowing by a linear front footage basis rather than a per parcel basis. And option three would be essentially keeping your exact same rate methodology as it is today, with the exception of absorbing the administrative charges into one charge rather than the three different charges for the service components. The next steps, where do we go from here? Well, we would of course take your direction for these assessment options, and that would essentially be our basis for the final update of the study with the latest numbers. We will be provided with the latest budget. This will be your preliminary fiscal year 2020 budget when it's developed. And we would receive new parcel information approximately June 1st, which will allow us to recalculate these bills with the most latest and greatest parcel data, understanding how the city's grown and redeveloped over the past year. Because right now, all these numbers you're seeing today are calculated upon last year's parcel information, and that's a major component that will need to be updated, but that information isn't available until June 1st. And then from there, we would have finalized the assessment role with whatever final decision that the commission makes. Updating the numbers with the new budget and parcel information is going to give you the most exact interpretation of these changes towards bills next year. So until you see that, right now we're still working with theoretical numbers, but the concepts of the cost shifts are really going to be borne out within those final calculations. That new budget information is going to be most important because that will decide the level of revenue you expect to collect. Right now, we're showing everything on an approximate revenue neutral basis. In other words, not achieving any more revenue than was generated last year. If this new budget is going to require a certain percentage of new revenue, that will be the next point of conversation to figure out, okay, we've assessed or derived our assessment rates based upon a revenue neutral basis right now. Here's what the rates look like. Is that generating enough revenue for this new budget? If the answer is no, we'll then verify the new budget and see what those rates will need to be to generate the efficient amount of revenue for fiscal year 2020. With that, we'd like to discuss and open it up to receive the commission direction for where we go with this study next.
For the record, we have Commissioner Carasone, who is in the house.
Can I go first before one of your
Go ahead.
squirrels happen?
Did it?
On slide 11, where you got the graphs going on, and you got option 1 with a where you're distributing the mowing, but you got that little cap on top saying you're raising the level of service. Why wouldn't that be the same on raising the level of service between option 1 and option 2? Wouldn't you be doing that all over the place out there, is to incorporate a higher level of service going through this with mowing?
Go ahead. Okay, for the record, Monica Bramble, Assistant Public Works Director. Option 2 and option 3 is no increase in level of service. It's for mowing that we mow vacant parcels 6 times a year on base roads and 8 times a year on arterials and collectors. That is what we are doing currently, option 2 and 3. Option 1 is increased because now, in addition to mowing vacant parcels, we're going to also provide that benefit to improved parcels. So basically in option 1, that benefit is for everybody. For us to be able to offer that service, because right now we just do it to the vacant, to mow everybody's, then we would need a couple more people and a boom mower. So that's the increased level of service that comes only with option 1.
Right, we had discussed that, and I wanted to get that on the record, and that's why I wanted to get that difference out there. And also, when it was down there later on in the slide, you were talking about option 1 and option 2, and you were talking about the numbers being a little bit enhanced by talking about mowing by linear footage. That is in both of them?
Okay, option 2, okay, and
I know
option 3.
option 2 was linear footage. This was on your slide on 18, to where you said, you know, you had the 10% decrease, and he had explained how some of the costs would go down because it was a smaller piece of property, to where these were going to be enhanced by going up. So to me, that's not by going by parcel, that's going by linear footage, isn't it?
Are you looking at slide 19?
18 I'm on right now.
Is that the option 1 impacts?
That's option
Okay,
one.
all right, so.
That's the way I heard it.
Right, then this is the option 1 where the mowing service is allocated to all parcels. It has the enhanced level of service to address the needs that staff has identified. This chart, you can see, right now, your vacant parcels are the only ones paying for the mowing costs. So when those costs get allocated to all the other properties, those other properties are gonna have a fee increase because they're now paying for the mowing services. Now, the actual level of service and the costs, of course, are going to go up so that the staff can provide the actual benefit to all those parcels that receiving the benefit. But that decrease and that shift is going to be right now essentially your small vacant residential parcels, which are bearing the burden for the mowing costs currently on a per parcel basis. They would see more of a decrease. You would see a different shift in that next slide because you're going by linear feet. Those that are increasing are your larger vacant parcels, which now pay on a linear feet basis.
Yeah. And that's why I was getting at this, because you're almost explaining it the same way. But this would still be by parcel, 2 would be by linear foot.
No, this would actually, you are not assessing separately for mowing at all under this option. It's essentially a cost borne within the road and drainage components. So there's no mowing line on the bill anymore. It is now, we mow as a city to benefit the road criteria and the drainage criteria, and the costs are now within those rate components. And this is better shown on slide 18, where you can now see that there is no right-of-way mowing charge on option 1. It's just absorbed within the rates themselves of the base enhanced roads and then primary, secondary, and tertiary drainage.
Right, it's just a little confusing there on the way it was explained earlier. You know, that's all I'm getting at, because I wanted to make sure it wasn't as confusing to everybody out there. That's all I had, sir. Thank you.
Heads up too, we do not have that one in our backup, that 18 that you have.
That's why our numbering's off.
Exactly, that's why when he was saying that, it was confusing to you.
I get you.
Commissioner Carrison?
Yes, did you do any research into, or at least looking into some of the options I had discussed with you in our one-on-ones? The kind of the hybrid option of, because the majority of impact is the mowing, essentially.
Right. For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. We did not do any additional research on it. We wanted to wait until the workshop today. However, we discussed it, and we could do a hybrid.
It's doable.
Yes, it's doable. Yes, ma'am.
So I guess for the commission's sake, what I had discussed was a difference between 1 and 2, considering that 1 was a little bit, right, 1 was just a little more advanced because it increases the drainage side of things. And then 2 was mowing by linear foot, and I had suggested a prepay service for those frontage lots that chose to get it cut. I guess, you know, basically it's 25% of our populace doesn't cut their front drainage ditches. And so if they want to have them pay for it by linear foot, pay for it in advance, part of their district fees.
5% off in advance is what you're thinking?
About that too, about getting a percentage off by paying it in advance, and also, but with that, a couple of things have to go hand in hand with it. The code enforcement side of things has to be expedited some way, because that's like one of those issues that's holding everything up. Maybe if by giving them and this would be a attorney question, maybe if by giving them that pre-notice that they have the option to pre-qualify by purchasing ahead of time the monthly maintenance, whatever, of their frontage road, could you in there release them from that 30-day notice requirement? Where they would only have the initial 30 days, I think it is. Because it's like 30 days and another 30 days. I mean, it's quite lengthy that they get for code enforcement violations. So,
On the due process issue, if there is one, as well as what the code says, would have to look into.
have to look into it, right?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't want to.
I'm just trying to find a way to expedite the code enforcement issues with the right-of-way cutting. That's what I'm looking for. And then those who would come in after the fact, you know, people who moved in new, they would obviously have to, you know, they'd get the same pay in advance service fee.
What about the person that moved? Would they get reimbursed, or would the person that moved in get to take up what was paid for?
Point. Well, I mean, that would be up to them. I would imagine they'd have to take over what was paid for, because that could be a nightmare. But what's gonna happen is the administration fee is gonna go up a little. But in the same token, you know, if you make sure that all of this is planned in advance, you can make sure that that administration fee is actually included in that overall, this is how much it's gonna cost per linear feet. Does that make any sense? It made more sense when we talked about it.
Can
Maybe.
I brought up,
I think staff has it right here.
well, I
Yeah.
brought up a similar thing in the meeting, and they said that you had also brought it up. And as we got talking, the implications of what you just mentioned, all the administrative that goes with it, I don't know as if it would be worth it. In my opinion, it was better just to lump it under option one and be done with it.
Go ahead. Seth?
I was just going to reiterate what Commissioner Carasone requested, is that we go by option number 2, which would affect only the vacant parcels mowing by linear feet. But those individuals who would like us to provide that service would have the option to pay for that service. They would have to pay in advance and be prepay. It would not come on your bill, because logistically that'd be a nightmare. So they would prepay. It would be for a year. It would be prorated. So if they came in January, it'd go through September. And if they did not opt to prepay and they did not mow, then it would be a code enforcement issue that hopefully it could be on the fast track, and they could pay us now at an additional charge because they were already, you know, gone through the property standards. The question of if you prepaid and then you move out, all those, when your closing costs and all those, just like when you prepay on your taxes, that is dealt with kind of when you close your home, on your home, that how much the new person gets of that benefit. So for us, I don't see that we would
That'd be
refund.
negotiated out between.
It would, yeah, it would be in the closing of that real estate. So you prepay, we provide the service, it'd be yearly, you would need to prepay. It would be though, prorated, so if you came in half of the year. And I think that's.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that, you know, again, it goes part and parcel with the whole code enforcement fast tracking issue, because if you're going to get those that are, 25%, even if we have, 15% of them taking advantage of the fact that they can pay in advance, and then there's several out in the estates that have frontage properties they just can't get to. I mean, it's not safe. So maybe they also will, and then you're paying for the service that's being provided. It's not, not everybody paying for someone who's going to have their stuff mowed every month where I gotta mow mine, That was one problem. I guess that the reason why we had discussed at length the whole hybrid thing is because it's absolutely necessary that we have this mowing compartment of it. But if you look at the increases, specifically, let's look at the vacant 5 acres in Northport Estates, going from 500 to 1,100. Some of those commercial properties were just going to be astronomical. And if you want to stifle growth, folks, that's a real quick way to do it. People will be selling that property quicker than you can blink your eye. I just think that considering the raise in our assessments by the millage, because of the amount of money that our houses are worth now, everybody has seen an impact in their increased taxes. So between that, the increases we did last year, I just think that this is an easier, less harsh fix.
Yes, ma'am.
The road and drainage has nothing to do with the value of your home, correct?
Correct, but it's
Okay.
still an impact on the individual person who has to pay that tax, that if you have a mortgage, your escrow just went up by $100 to $300.
For road and drainage? Or are you talking about outside?
It
of
doesn't
road?
matter, when you get your escrow bill,
Yeah.
it'll have the whole, it'll say, we want X amount of dollars for your taxes,
Okay. I
period.
just
They
wanted
look at
to-
it as a tax.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't being done by property, that it was just a dollar amount for road and drainage. Okay. The way you made it sounded like this was based on property value.
Well, no, that's just
That's
how
why
you
I just
heard it.
wanted.
But the point is that, you know, you have a value of your home that has increased in value, so now your taxes have gone up, your ad valorums. Now you want to add a fee that has additional increase. At what point do we break everyone? That's really the bottom line. And I know that our ad valorums are going to have to be evaluated very closely because we're going to need fire and we're going to need EMS help. So, especially with all of the impacts for next year. So, you know, I am very concerned at the overall individual's tax bill.
Commissioner Luke?
When looking at the graph on our page 12, what she mentioned about the 5 acre vacant lot going up to that almost 1,200, that's in option 2. Option 1, it's just $80. It has increased by. And I see option 1 as finally fixing drainage as a system and looking at it as a lump and distributing it across the board the way it needs to be in order to care for the drainage within the city, which we haven't had since the get-go. And so I see this methodology as correcting that. I also, I'm going to use the couple sitting right here. They've had an issue with, you know, the right-of-way and that type of stuff. So my question posing is, in their situation, let's say that right-of-way out on Tropicare, option 1 would mow that right-of-way how many times a year?
If they live directly on Tropicare, it's going to be 8 times a year.
They don't. Well,
No.
yeah, you live on directly on Tropicare, but aren't you talking
She's
about
on a corner.
Okay, I'm just talking
Behind
about
your
the
house.
right-of-way. What they were complaining about may have to do with all of the easements, but I'm talking about the right-of-way on Tropicare. So,
Yes, ma'am. Two things. So the right-of-way along Tropicare will be cut 8 times per year.
whether it's improved or not.
Yes, ma'am. In between,
Okay.
however, if the grass gets higher than 12 inches, it will be the homeowner's responsibility to cut it.
And that was the
Okay.
next place I was
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
go to.
Yes, ma'am.
Was even though it's being mowed,
Mhm.
you know, in this assessment to take care of our drainage
Yes,
system
ma'am.
as a whole,
Mhm.
we still have that code that says aesthetically,
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not to be over a foot tall.
That is correct.
So the
Yes, ma'am.
city would be maintaining its routine,
For
but then it
drainage
would be
purpose.
upon them for aesthetic to make sure it didn't go over 12 inches in between our mowing.
Yes, ma'am, you are correct.
And that is doing it without having them buy into an option of paying separately.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'm going one step further with that when I would discuss it with them too. Now, if a homeowner is out there taking care of their property all along, they would not even impede on that, you know.
Better not.
Well, as long as there are no drainage issues. But if somebody's taking care of their property, they'll just bypass it and go along.
Correct.
There's no drainage, but
Correct.
we,
But
we've
if
got to
there's
get the
drainage-
mindset that we're trying to change it from aesthetic mowing, just like we discussed earlier in our previous meeting. We have to get our mindset away from doing it aesthetically and to caring for this drainage system that desperately needs methodology to it.
Right, so
That,
there is
that was
no
part of that
fluctuation.
letter, that, and I never completed that thought, was that in that letter, because you have to send a letter out about the methodology to make sure people are educated on the fact that
It's
there's
changed.
aesthetic versus, you know, maintenance, and that our road and drainage will handle maintenance.
Vice Mayor, just really quick.
Yeah, my concern with option one is that the people, the majority of the city is taking care of their swale area themselves. There's only a few that are that need to have the city take care of it because of the depth. And if we're only doing it 6 or 8 times a year for drainage, they're going to think that they're getting an increase in their taxes and that they're not going to then take care of it for the aesthetic part of it.
Well, get code
So
enforcement,
there,
get on them.
so then
Over
there's a
12
code
inches.
enforcement problem, but I know there are two
That's
different,
what I'm
I
saying.
understand there's two different things. You understand, everybody here understands that it's two different things, but we have citizens that see mowing as one thing, it's mowing.
Right.
Whether it be for drainage or aesthetics, it's mowing.
Well, that's why option one is the beauty, because it removes it. It's maintenance of drainage. It's no longer mowing.
I think what Vice Mayor is trying to say is that the people that believe that they're getting mowed should be mowed meticulously. And
Or
it's
just
not,
taking care of once a month.
or,
for the
yeah, or
drainage
once a
ditch,
week or
once
whatever,
a
just
week,
like you would if
exactly.
you live there.
And I
And
see
people
that
don't
being I
understand that.
see that being a very big
And-
issue.
And I mow mine all the time. But that doesn't mean I take care of the drainage in front of my house. I don't. I don't maintain that. I aesthetically mow the grass in front of my house. Which, exactly, I don't know the slant or the grade or anything of the sort, you know? So I can't maintain that drainage. So again, I mow like crazy, so it looks pretty aesthetically, well, as pretty as it can be. But I don't do the drainage, and that is the difference
If
that
I
we have to
can-
get through our heads.
I think Vice Mayor is saying exactly that we're talking about mowing that ditch, that it's not gonna be pretty, but it's gonna get mowed, and that's why I brought up earlier
What I liked-
about making sure that difference is in those letters that have
Yes.
to be sent out to
What I
everyone.
liked about the linear foot was because it was very equitable all the way across the board.
That's-
However, what I liked about the mowing of the road and drainage is it's easier to understand, to say, listen, we're mowing this for drainage, or we're mowing this for line of sight. That's the two reasons that we mow this, and that's why we do it six times a year. But I did like the linear footage because it was very equitable across the board. I don't quite understand, it hasn't quite clicked to me exactly what your hybrid is yet, how that works.
I like the hybrid.
I
because
do kind of like it because it covers a little bit of both. I just don't know exactly, it's just not quite
What
there.
I
with
am
my
hearing
mind.
with the hybrid approach, and correct me if I'm wrong,
You're probably
is-
right.
is
I'm just not
that-
saying it right.
is that we're gonna stick with what we currently are doing. Where you, hold on, let me, where the city mows the city mows for drainage, the vacant parcels. If it's an improved parcel, the city bypasses it and doesn't do anything. What I'm hearing in Commissioner Carasone's hybrid is If you live in the estates and you have an improved parcel, or anywhere in the city, that you cannot maintain a dip in your drainage in the front of your house, and it's an improved parcel, then they could opt in and have the city come and maintain that 6 or 8 times a year.
And I will say correct, except Commissioner Carazone said she would like option 2 by linear feet, which is a change.
Okay, so the only difference then, so I'm hearing it correctly, instead of it being every parcel is treated equally, it would be done by linear foot. If they want to opt into it. Otherwise, the city
It's
is
road and-
only going to take care of
road
the
and drainage.
vacant parcels.
For road and drainage, under the road and drainage option. So
But
that's
the-
the high one. If I can opt in on the linear, or I can just have an undeveloped lot and not opt into anything, and road and drainage will take care of that. It's 6 times a year.
Which sounds good when you're thinking about the cost. But when we're talking about an entire drainage system, trying to get it so that it all works together, why are we having people pick and choose whether they have the drainage cared for or not? Option one,
No, I think drainage is covered no matter what.
no, you're talking about opting in.
If I,
Talking about mowing.
Mowing is not for aesthetic, it is for drainage. And you're gonna allow people to opt in whether they want their front yard, taken care of for drainage? Option one takes care of an entire system, no matter whether you opt in or not.
Not
And it's
really.
not gonna put any more of a cost on somebody who has a lot that they can't care for, because we're all carrying the burden on our back for the entire system.
if I can interject something, if I can, please. The other difference, the other big difference with option 1 is we're adding in, last year, we have permission from commission to go forth to do the centers of the swales in the estates only twice a year. And that is huge, especially in the states where it's very difficult and it gets very high, very difficult for the average homeowner to maintain it. You almost have to have a tractor, or you have to outsource it to somebody that has the proper equipment. So that being said, through option 1, that is an added level of service to the other lots, both vacant and developed, for those that can't do it in developed. For example, in the vacant lot situation, we would mow the sides and twice a year the centers. So if we go with the linear foot option, then we will continue status quo of the mowing. The vacant lots, of course, all of the lots will be assessed according to linear footage. But for those vacant lot owners that cannot or choose not to do the mowing themselves, under the hybrid situation, could opt in. But that's just going to be for the 6 times a year for local and 8 times a year for arterials and collectors, not for the 2 times center. That
Correct.
comes under option 1. And as Commissioner Luke mentioned, I'm just trying to provide some clarification between the 3. That's the biggest difference, quite honestly, in option 1 and option 2 and 3, is the additional level of service to ensure, because what we're trying to do is go from just plain mowing and go into more of drainage maintenance. That's the objective of option 1, as opposed to 2 and 3. 2 and 3 is basically status quo.
That's me.
The
Just,
cha-
just for clarification,
Yes, ma'am.
so the city of Northport that has an improved home on the standard 80 by 120 lots that has a swale,
Yes, ma'am.
it's just mowing. I mow it for aesthetics, I mow it to keep the drainage cleared. Okay? The city really does nothing in front of my house. I've lived there for 15 years. They did nothing in front of my house. Okay? But the center part that you're talking about, that's more for those really deep areas like out in the estates or in other areas.
Okay, right, and quite honestly, we have, we did just a general survey, if you will, looking at what types of properties do mow their properties, do mow their swales in front of their house and do not. About 25% of the people do not mow them, okay? That being said, many people, for whatever reason, in a lot of cases, it's because it's wet a lot of times during the year, most of the year, for example, don't mow the centers ever. Sometimes intermittently when they can, when it's dry. So that option one, that is the advantage of having option one implemented, would be to make certain that all properties, the centers of the swales, are maintained. It's for drainage purposes. Has nothing to do with the aesthetics. We're trying to move from aesthetics of mowing into true maintenance of the drainage swale to have your hydraulic function proper. That's what our goal is here.
So the 25% of the improved parcels
Yes.
that cannot maintain that swale during rainy season will no longer have to go out there with a weed eater that the city will come and do it the 6 times a year?
The banks of the swale, for both vacant, under option one, for both vacant and developed, the side, what I call the banks, or the side slopes of the swale, those will be mowed 6 times local, arterials 8 times, and collectors. The center of the swale, let's say in the spring and the winter, when the swale is dry, we will go and we will mow, probably using a slope mower in a lot of cases, and make sure that is cut down the very center, the bottom center of the ditch. And that is what's very important on the option one. That's the huge benefit of option one.
How many actual, I mean, as I understand it, it's just main roads, like Tropicare, Sumter,
Toledo Blade.
Toledo, okay. How many actual parcels do you plan on cutting the middle of that ditch? How many?
All of them twice a year.
Okay, so even if I keep my lawn up meticulously and it does not need to be mowed in the middle center ditch, you're gonna come mow it?
No.
Because they're gonna get pissed off.
No, for those people that are maintaining it, we are not gonna touch it. We're gonna go by.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so once again, someone who lives out there, drives Tropicare every day, drives Toledo Blade every day, knowing how many do not take care of the center of their ditch,
Right.
how many is that?
Tropicare
About 5.
Estates, about how many?
About 5.
No, not in the estates, way more than 5.
On Tropicare?
Yes, in Tropicare. We have many. I have people calling me all the time, asking me to please figure out a way to maintain it. I had a lady the other day. She said that she actually pays, I invited her to the meeting, she actually pays for the fines and has for the last couple of years. Her and her husband are elderly. They can't do it, so they would just pay the fines rather than, and I said, well, if we had a program to where you could either pay or your taxes got increased or something, would you be interested in that? And she said, yes, I would.
Talked about option one. How much would the commercial undeveloped properties be under option one?
I didn't see that on.
Option one for the Walmart, for example, 67.
Undeveloped.
Oh, undeveloped.
'Cause
Vacant,
isn't the undeveloped
vacant
that
would
go
be
up?
$91.
$91.
Yes, ma'am.
Under option one.
Yes, ma'am.
And how much is it now?
140.
142.
So it'd be reduced.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the general single family, just quarter acre, is gonna go up by $46.
$40.
38.
$38 it goes up.
It'll go up 38. Yes,
See,
ma'am.
and that's part of the reason why I like the hybrid. The people that are already maintaining their property, theirs is going up. Okay? And when I say maintaining their property, whether it be for aesthetics or for drainage, it doesn't matter. It's being maintained by somebody other than a citizen, by the city. But they're paying more But the people that are actually getting the benefit in option one, the vacant properties, those are all going down. Everybody goes up except for the vacant quarter acre and the residential multifamily Victoria Point. Those two are going down. They're the only two out of that whole list that goes down.
Right. And that's
And-
because the costs are being redistributed.
Exactly, they're
Right.
being redistributed.
Yes,
But the
ma'am.
person that is getting the biggest benefit is going down substantially because everybody else is picking up the cost because the city as a whole is benefiting from the drainage being done.
Okay, I don't know that that's accurate, that the vacant are gonna receive the most benefit. Because there's many people that have developed homes. For example, right off the bat, Mr. Speak went out with his staff and just did a general survey of the houses that do not maintain their swale for whatever reason. It's about 25%. That's developed, not
Right.
vacant. Right.
So if they opted, those 25% that need the city to be able to maintain their swale because of the depth and they're old, they can't do it,
Right.
then they should pay for that. That is a request that they are opting in on. But to have everybody else pitch in, that doesn't seem equitable.
Can I jump in?
And it's going to
I
the
just-
hybrid that you're talking about.
The equity in option one is for the drainage system. In that, it doesn't matter if we're going to mow your property or your property or your property. The drainage through all those properties then will flow as it was designed to flow, with no impediments along the way. So that's just the difference, not good, bad, it's just the difference
But the
between the option 1, 2, and 3.
75% of the parcels that take care of their swale areas are not impeding the flow of the water at all.
But those parcels would benefit from a totally clean system that allows drainage up and down. It's, you gotta reconfigure the
That'll never
concept of
happen.
what we're trying to achieve between options 2 and 3 and options 1. Option 2 and 3 is just providing mowing to these vacant parcels.
Correct.
Option 1 is doing something different. It's the concept. We're doing this because we need better water flow and better safety for our road network by mowing these areas. It's not for the reasons why you're mowing options 2 and 3 or conceptually why. So be careful when you say who's benefiting from what. If someone's bill's going down, they're clearly benefiting from a change in methodology. But the benefit from why you are charging these parcels in the first place for this service is a concept shift for option 1.
But it was just said that if we did the hybrid, as I was discussing earlier, it would not change the fact that you would still do the center line drainage cut.
No, ma'am. What I said, the difference is, option 1, we do the centers. Option 2 and 3, we do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But aren't you supposed to be maintaining the centers anyways as part of road and drainage at the very,
Developed
regardless of what we do
developed
today?
property owners are supposed to maintain everything, the center and the slopes.
See,
It's
now
never
what
been a
happened,
methodology.
what?
So there's never been a system and methodology to
Well, there
care
was
for
a
it.
system, and that's why I'm asking, is that there used to be a system that that areas, neighborhoods were on an actual schedule. And they would go through
Yes.
area number 1, and they
Yes.
would redig the ditches, and they would hydro seed the ditches,
Yes.
and 9 times out of 10, the hydro seed doesn't work, you know this.
Yes, ma'am.
And then they would move on to the next neighborhood, and they would do the
Yes,
same thing.
they
They would
did.
dig the swales
Yes, they
out of
did.
that. What happened to that?
Yes, they did.
But I believe that's digging the drainage. It has nothing whatsoever to do
No,
with
no,
the
I get
mowing.
that, but
With
when
the
you
mowing
dig,
of it.
Well, a
here's
couple-
the thing, if you dig that drainage out once a year, or even if it's every
Once every
other
5
year,
years.
then what happens is that it gets low enough, and it gets level enough, and the slopes are correct, that you can actually cut that ditch.
In certain areas, yes. But back in the day, you gotta remember, they went down Salford and they were on it for 3 years and they messed it up every
Well,
single
I don't
year.
know about Salford, I can tell you that my little hole in the wall corner at the end of Price in a neighborhood that is a residential neighborhood, it's not a main street, got done once a year.
Sure. And they
That
did
whole
for the
neighborhood.
city as well. But while I
Yeah.
got your attention, I had a question for you on your option 2 hybrid. When you were talking earlier about the, going with the linear footage, you were talking about out in the estates on how everybody would pack up and leave because the extra expense out. Right, but we're still talking about a hybrid and then still talking about going with linear footage, so I'm just trying to get some clarification on. You're saying that would stop growth if we went with the linear footage rather than going.
No.
That's what I
No.
heard when you were
No.
explaining earlier.
Actually, I was talking about option 1, the large increases. And then option 2, the large increases for the vacant 5 acres in Northport Estates, is what I was saying, is that there is a very large
Right, and that's by
proportionate
going by
increase.
linear footage.
Well, there's an increase no matter which way you look,
Correct,
okay?
but it pretty much
So-
almost doubles.
But the linear footage charge would be by choice, not by requirement.
What if it's vacant?
If it's vacant,
Then it's
then
requirement, and they're
Then-
getting
then
what they're
that's
paying.
That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to understand what you're thinking. That's all.
you can't run them out of town if they're not here to begin with. What?
I see this being is, we're trying to put a system together, and I have been told that there was not a system ever. That we've been running around patching stuff up, being reactive rather than proactive. But just like you would have a bond or you'd be fixing up the roads that we drive on. I mean, you live off in a neighborhood, you don't just pay for the road that drive or goes in front of your house. You also pay for the connectors in the arterial. And this is the same way as I see the drainage. You're paying for your swales, your tertiary, and your primary, because it's a system just like the road is a system. And you have to, in my opinion, you have to bite the bullet at some point in time to get us to a point where we can take care of that drainage system the way we take care of a road system, and that is as one unit.
Well, another way that I'm looking at it, they're getting off of doing the roads, they're now starting to concentrate on drainage. I believe this is like stage 1 on how do we get our stuff together to go out forward and create a drainage system throughout Northport that works a lot better.
2016, we told them they needed to concentrate both on roads and drainage. It was back in the day where they concentrated on one or the other, but the 2016
Right, we
commission
told them
said,
they had to focus on
stop that. You need to start working on both of them at the same time and up your
Okay, so
game
let's
in
say they
drainage.
did that. Now they're going into hydro on drainage, and they're just trying to vamp up their process. That's what I'm seeing in this.
Well, this actually stemmed from last year's budget discussion about how the flooding occurred out in the estates, Tropicare, Reisterstown, how we had several streets and people who lived on streets that did not take care of their frontage or their swales. We talked about how we could charge per parcel for all of those that needed those drainage areas and those swales cut and reformed, essentially. The amount of money that came back to us was astronomical. So we brought them back to the drawing board and said, look, you need to find a better way to do this, and this is what we got.
So
Right?
I'm gonna throw this idea, and it's all it is, it's an idea. We did a road bond to fix our roads. Has anybody thought or explored, and I know we've not had this discussion, but to do a drainage bond to fix our drainage in the city? Because this is a problem, and no sooner do you fix grid 308 than grid 406 is needing to be done. It is a constant ebb and flow, no pun intended, because we're dealing with water. But it's one of those things, if you're going to get the system to work collectively, you have to tackle it collectively, not hit or miss here or there. Has it ever been thought of to have that kind of a conversation? Because I know we have our grid map, And part of the things that I heard at the last methodology when we had our chambers full was, what's the plan? What are you gonna do? What's the plan? And I don't see a plan, kind of like with the road bond, where it said, if you live in these streets, it's all gonna be done in 2017. If you live in these streets, oh, that's already been done. If you live in these streets, it's 2020, whatever year.
Well, we do have a system, it's the grid system.
Right.
So we do have a plan. We have our stormwater management plan that the commission adopted through the budget last year. But I'll let the city manager speak to the bonding.
Okay. There was a plan mentioned last year during the budget where the Department of Public Works showed all the grids, how they had broken the city down into grids. And I believe it started on one grid this year, or was it?
Yes,
one or two?
yes.
So we are working on a grid. In answer to the question of a bonding, I will tell you staff has talked about the issue of a bonding. If a little history on how we got to where the road bond successfully passed, we tried to do the road bond, I believe it was 2010, 9 or 10. Commissioner Carasone was on. The city actually put a referendum out for 3 separate bonds that year. The road one came the closest to passing, but none of them passed. But at that point in time, the city continued to work towards improving the roads. And they did as much as we could each year. And the benefit of continuing to do that, from my perspective at the time, was building public trust. To show that we were working, making progress, and also show that at that rate of progress, we would never get there. But that we were still making an effort, doing as much as we could. After seeing that progress, and then doing a public education campaign.
And the economy improved, because 2010 compared to, is totally different.
Then the public trust was developed.
It was a non-stop educational campaign.
It is important to do that. And it's expressing all sides. Obviously, in case you know, legally we cannot lobby to have it passed. We have to educate, and we were out there with the entire plan. But I believe just as much as the educational plan, it took the time to build the trust that you're actually going and working towards a solution. We could certainly put a bond out there. It's not something that hasn't been discussed internally, but we wanted to, show that we have a grid system. We did that this year. We want to show that we're working on it, and we are doing that right now.
Can I stop you right there real quick? So we have a grid system,
Yes.
and there's many different numbers on this grid system. So if we put this grid system out there and I go, I live at grid 306, when is grid 306 going to be done and completed? What's the answer?
And right now, I don't know that they've all been identified. Which year, which was the same issue for the road bond. You and I talked about the road bond, and it provided a list of what was going to be done. That wasn't done until we got to the plan of actually passing the road bond. When we started the original process of doing roads as we could afford to do them, there wasn't a set time frame that you could look up. The public could not go onto our site and say, I live on Sylvania Avenue, when are you going to do that?
We no longer have a schedule
That's
like we used to have, that you go around and redig those center lines.
But it's not something that's been advertised at this point. This system, this specific system, was created last year.
But do we have a schedule that you're going to do the Floribana neighborhood on X date and start the center line redig ditch?
No.
We don't do that anymore.
No.
See, this is where I have a
If I-
problem.
If I can just clarify, Commissioner Carazone, we have been very reactive on the digging the center, and it's usually, somebody calls up, they say they have a drainage problem, we go down that street. Some streets, we go down every year because people aren't cutting their centers, or there truly is drainage problems. But up until now, we do not have a set plan that we go through every neighborhood once a year. And if we did back then, as much as we could, we didn't have nearly the houses that we have now. But the way the methodology is set up, and the vacant properties we mow, we don't do the center, the developed properties, the homeowner has to mow, including the centers.
Mow, but they don't dig it out. I mean, you
No,
guys still dig
the
it
di-
out.
Yes, we can still dig it out, and we will have, that'll be
But
part
you
of our.
only do it by demand, is
Well,
what you're saying.
right now. However, with the stormwater management plan that we adopted last year along with the grid system program, we are also gonna have more proactive programs in place through our drainage improvements projects. So every year, we're gonna identify things that have to be done in different areas of the city, whether it be pipe replacements, digging out certain streets, you know, the ditches.
It's still haphazard. It's not an actual, this neighborhood on.
Well, we'll identify
this
each,
month.
no, we'll identify each year which neighborhoods, pardon me?
It's not haphazard. What we do is we look at, Chuck Speak, Operations Manager. What we do is we look at the complaints as they come in. We look at the complaints, we look at the size of the grid. We have 1,600 miles of swales in the city. So to
We
think
know.
that we could do all of them every year is a fantasy. Okay, so we look at how many we have per linear mile of swale. And that's how we identify the next grid that we move into.
But if you did grids every month and continued throughout 12 months, what are the odds of you having to go out just for the complaint areas? Wouldn't it just be an annual maintenance to that particular area, and then you don't have to keep it? It's like my grandmother used to say, shoveling shit against the tide. Instead of just doing it and doing it on an annual basis,
Or or
then you're prepared. But instead, it sounds like, well, if you complain, then we're gonna figure out if that complaint meets the requirements, and then if it meets the requirements, we'll check the areas around it, and then we'll probably schedule that for about 6 months later, or maybe a year.
In order for me to do a grid a month, that's just not feasible. It
Well,
takes
it used to be.
roughly a year to do a grid the size of the section we did this year.
And what grid did you do this year?
Sure,
Last year, I was told,
Yeah.
sure.
What
Two-
grid-
205B. 205 was so large, we did half last year, and then we finished
Okay, so
the last 2
Commissioner
years.
Pearson, or, I
Correct.
mean, sorry, Commissioner Luke.
I was told that last year, the city was divided into 4 quadrants, and you guys were gonna have a 4-year plan trying to tackle one quadrant at a point in time. And so the system wouldn't actually be fully in place until after 4 years, where it was, you know,
Really?
put actually up to standard, and then you could maintain after that. Is there validity to what I was told?
I don't know who told you 4 grids. There's
No,
actually 40.
quadrants.
I work on grids. I don't know who
Okay.
told you the quadrants, so I don't know that that was related to my project. There's 46 grids. 46.
And you're not combining any of them, you're tackling them
We-
one at a time?
We may when we get to the smaller grids. Right now, the problemed areas were some of the larger grids. So again, it's based on the miles of swale versus the complaints that we get. And we're not just digging swale, we're not just digging swales when we go in there. We're tearing out all the old pipe, putting in all new catch basins, putting in all new concrete pipe, piping the outfalls. It's a complete, because the pipes are 60 years old and they're failing under the
Are they
roadways.
failing?
Yes, they're failing all over the
Okay.
city.
If they're failing,
We
I
have
can
some
see
roads in the
replacing
east
them,
end that are closed because the pipes have failed.
So if we were to choose option 1, how does that get you ahead? Or how does that, are we still gonna continue?
but doing a half a
Well, I mean, are we still gonna continue being reactive, or, yeah, how does option 1 kind of get us caught up? Does it, or is it just another way to charge?
No.
Do we have a plan to get
Option-
caught up, or do we?
Option 1 is gonna get us a start. It's not gonna get everything done as, for example, when the vice mayor referenced a bonding. We just don't have the money to do everything at once. And for so many years, for whatever reason, money, whatever, I mean, when I first came here, they were paying $49 a lot, developed or vacant. And that's part of this problem. Now we have this huge costs and things that have been let go, we're trying to do catch up on. So the first thing we're trying to do is divide the whole city into grids and go in by grid, by neighborhood, and get everything caught up. Tear out the pipes that are 60 years old and they're failing, get that done, get the swales redug on all the streets in the grid. Once we go through and get all the grids, in the background, we also have drainage system improvement projects, which we go in, for example, we identify neighborhoods. This year is on Deming. On Deming Avenue, the drainage is very poor. It has a lot of flooding. We're gonna put in trench boxes underneath the driveways. That's in this current budget year.
Option one allows you to get caught up.
Option one allows us to mow all of the vacant and the developed that don't want to mow it, 6 times for local, 6 times a year, arterials and collector 8 times. In addition, do the centers of the swales on all lots twice a year.
It starts in
Unless you
maintenance
don't want
plan.
it, unless you're doing it yourself.
So when I asked the
already.
question,
Yes,
you initially started with, it's a start to get us caught up. So that's why I was asking. So option one has nothing to do with getting caught up. So let's.
so option one is merely getting
A
the drainage
cost
system
structure.
cleared out, getting the drainage system
With
cleared
the
out.
cost structure to be able to do that.
Yes, sir.
That's
Right.
only dealing with mowing, not bringing in anything to change the drainage whatsoever and repairing it. This is just on your mowing aspect, correct?
This is just to clear the bottom of the swale for that hydraulic function. Everything that grows in that swale, and there's places where there are
We have
trees
trees.
growing in the swale.
Right.
So
You
it
may
doesn't-
find humps and bales and all sorts of stuff
And it
in
doesn't
that
include the-
process.
Correct.
So
The replacement of any of these things, that's not what this includes.
No. Now the grid system and the implementation of the drainage program and all that we started actually 2 years ago, and that is part of our assessment. That has nothing to do with these new options. And each year as we continue on, for example, if we want to do more grids or more areas, we may have to increase our budget in order to accomplish that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right
that's what I
now,
was wondering.
if we do 1 grid per year, when we have the smaller ones, as Chuck mentioned, we may be able to do a couple of the smaller ones in 1 year.
So-
Now, eventually,
And that's just milling. Right?
no.
Grid system is to improve the
Yeah.
The grid
as a whole.
system, we go in, we tear out all the old corrugated metal culvert pipes. We regrade all the ditches in that grid area. So if you got 10 streets, all the ditches on each street within the grid will be regraded.
Right.
Okay?
That's what they used to do every year.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We go in and we do all that. And any regrading or whatever, it has drainage problems corrected, outfall pipes, roadside pipes, all those types of things. That's what will be done within the grid. Now, once the grids are all caught up and everything like that, we will have a system to where every year we're gonna, as Commissioner Carazona is talking about, that we used to do, we had a lot less houses, is go in, and we never, by the way, had a scheduled, it was hit or miss when there was a drainage complaint. But we will have it scheduled, let's say this year we do 10 streets, 20, whatever it is, we go in and regrade them every so many years.
But with what you said, Ms. Julie, was,
Yes.
all right, so if we're doing a half a grid a year to a grid a year,
Yes,
all right,
and the larger
we're
ones.
never gonna get caught up.
Never.
So I guess that's my question. All right, so option one has nothing to do with getting caught up. It just has to do with doing a price structure.
May I?
Yes.
I'm hearing what you're saying loud and clear. It's almost in separate discussion, though.
Oh, I know.
What we're looking at here today is essentially what we're doing now, whether right or wrong or needs to be doing more. How do we apportion those costs to our property owners? What you guys are really discussing is level of service enhancements. That's the next step. How much budget do we want?
Sure.
Do we want to be spending more to achieve the things that you guys are asking about, regardless of how we allocate it to the property owners? Because that's all we're considering today. If we want to get into the discussion of we need to be doing more, finishing X number of grids more per year, that's going to raise the budget up, but that's a whole different discussion that will come at another
I
time.
fully get that. What I'm looking for is just a 30-second answer. What is our process of getting caught up? Now, I understand this has nothing to do with it. So I'm just looking for the 30-second answer. All right, because let's say I'm looking at option one, that's all great. But if we're going to continually be behind, so this is a separate question, what is our 30-second answer is, what is our plan to get caught up? Do we have that plan? Because I keep hearing that once we get caught up, well, how are we going to do that?
Probably the best way I can answer
Be
it
like with a bonding?
is with the water control structures. It's gonna take me 20 years
Right.
of planning water control structure and building one every year to stay within a manageable budget. The only real answer that I know of right now off the cuff is the bonding or something similar. Okay?
I mean, that's
That
an
would be
answer.
the same for the drainage. Yes, sir.
Can I get clarification on something?
Mhm.
So you're saying if we approve option one for fiscal year 1920,
Yes.
that will include mowing of all of the parcels, swales for drainage, regardless if they're vacant or improved?
Only if they're not cut themselves, though.
Only
Remember
if they're not
that.
already
Yes,
cut.
ma'am, that's correct.
So it will also include, because I heard this, that you will go in and dig out and regrade.
No. We will mow the center of the swale
No, it's
twice a
this.
year.
That's another,
Okay,
that's
so
another
what does
conversation.
mow the center swale mean? Because I'm,
Mow the grass.
It's
It's the bottom of the ditch.
the bottom of the ditch, we will mow, whether it be with.
I
the-
don't have a bottom of a ditch, that's why I guess I'm having a hard
Everybody has
time
a bottom of the
understanding.
ditch.
You have a swale.
When the
you have
ditch
a bottom
goes like
of the ditch.
this, it's
I'm
the
telling you,
center.
I don't have a bottom of a ditch.
Then you have a bottom of the
Everybody
swale.
does.
It goes in every
It goes, it's even with the road and then the,
The swale comes down.
Comes back up to get to the road.
it's pretty darn even
Where it
with the
comes to
road.
the point, and some of them are more flat than others, but that's the center right
Yeah.
there. We're either gonna go in there with a tractor, or in a lot of cases, for example, in the estates, with a slope mower.
Okay, question to piggyback on that. You go in for that twice a year and you find a tree in there, what are you gonna do?
We are gonna remove it.
Thank you, ma'am. That is maintenance
Yes,
of
ma'am.
that drainage system.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not just mowing.
Correct.
Because
And that
you're
we would use
changing
a slope mower,
the
or we would
directive.
dig it out somehow.
So
Yes,
what-
ma'am.
This maintenance goes into play when you have the corrective actions, even bonding. This sets in motion what you need for a system.
Don't we already do that by code enforcement?
That's another topic.
That's what we're, I mean,
Sometimes-
that's what they're supposed to. They're complaining about people with 12 inches or 2 inches worth of grass. I can't imagine them not going out there and writing someone for a tree.
We have some, I don't know how
Okay.
many we have and how many, but we still have trees growing in there.
So we're here to choose an option.
Yes.
We have three options here. We have a fourth option with Commissioner Carasone. So what kind of direction do we want to give concerning?
Clarify the option number 4, just so that we're very clear. Option number 4 would be to mow those, kind of use option 1 as an example, I guess, but charge per linear feet and have it by option of the property owner.
So
I just don't understand that.
So in other words,
You can't
instead
do
of
it.
them going and
Not
cutting
online.
every single property one time a year,
Well, they wouldn't
6
cut the
times.
ones that are already cut, so they wouldn't cut mine. Just because they would drive right by it, and there wouldn't be nothing to cut. So I'm opted out just because I take care of mine.
but the guy next door where his is too deep,
They would
he
mow
may
his.
opt in. Or he's not here 6 months out of the year, he may opt in. And then they would be charged per linear foot, and therefore they would pay to get their yard cut. And their swale cut, and I'm talking total swale, not bottom of the swale, size of the swale, whole dang swale,
That sounds swell.
right?
So it's basically, what I'm hearing is, what we're doing currently
All right.
for vacant properties, you're suggesting to have an opt-in for improved properties to be able to have their swale that is deep.
If for whatever reason, if I
For
just
whatever
choose
reason,
not to do
if I-
it.
Exactly, so basically option 4, and if I'm hearing right, is what we're doing currently, but opting in for improved properties.
No, it's adding option 1.
It's option 2. That's it. But with a separate program for people who have a developed parcel to be charged not a non-ad valorem fee, some other charge on a linear foot basis. It's essentially option 2 with a
Option 2
separate
with an
program.
opt-in if you're an improved
It's,
parcel.
I would hesitate to say that that's part of this option, because that would not be billed on the non-ad valorem assessment. It would be
Right.
simply a separate program altogether.
Correct.
It's essentially
Gotcha.
adopting option 2 with the consideration of this opt-in program for developed parcels, completely separate fee basis.
which may.
I was just gonna go into it, which,
Between option 1 and 2, in
Because
level of service,
there's a different level of service in option 1 than number 2.
what's the difference?
$300,000.
Exactly. What's the difference in the level of service?
In option 1, we would
Do all properties.
do all properties, but we would also do the centers twice a year. In
Okay.
option 2, we would only do the bank, the side slopes,
A vacant parcel.
Thank you.
vacant parcels.
Okay.
Right, vacant
so-
parcels only.
Exactly what you're doing now, but charging by
So,
linear feet.
Right.
so option 1 would be exactly what we're doing now, but we're gonna add the parcels that do it themselves and that 25% that do not do it. Correct?
The mowing's gonna be accomplished all over the city with an enhanced level of service to accomplish that.
Okay, so yet again, we're addressing 25% of the population that don't do it now. So that's what we're doing.
I view it from, you have a drainage system that needs to be free and clear to allow water to flow. You have a road system that needs to have signs with visibility and for safety issues. That
nothing to do
benefits
with
every single
signs.
parcel. That's what option 1 is. Option number 2, completely
Wait,
different
option
concept.
1 has to do with signs? How does that have to do with signs?
Vertical mowing.
Vertical mowing.
Yeah, that's the road side of it.
Option number
So-
1, we assign a benefit for the road criteria for a clear line of sight for traffic safety, road signs, and hazards. The drainage benefit is to improve the drainage network for hydraulic functionality. That is the definition of the benefit criteria to be able to assess a non-ad valorem assessment to all parcels for mowing services. You are only doing it now for vacant parcels.
Mm-hmm.
That does not accomplish the level of service goal of option 1. So
Okay.
it's not doing what you're doing right now.
Correct, but what we're doing right now is most people are taking care of their own property, except for 25% of the population. So what number 1 does is says, you 25%, we are going to in turn take care of your property, the frontage, the swales, by cutting it, and once a year doing the middle of the swale. Right? This is
I have
how
no
I'm
idea where
hearing
this
it.
25% number came in, but the idea
Because it was
is,
mentioned 3 times here on the record.
the idea is, I own a parcel, and if I mow my lawn, I keep it clear. I don't need the city services for that. But I benefit from a clear and wide drainage and road network. Therefore, do it all, and it's on my assessment because I benefit from that. Whether I mow it or not, I'm benefiting from that clear line of sight and safe road network and an efficient hydraulic drainage system. It's
They
completely
have a
separate-
drainage pipe on my personal property
I-
that they're benefiting
I understand.
from, but yet didn't pay anything, so.
You're going down here's what my property looks and feels like versus what the concept of the system as a whole is, and that's not going down in a fair conversation.
I'm looking at this.
Let's take a look and see what direction we want to go.
I just had an idea of something. So the vacant parcels are also the culprits of the vertical mowing need. Because my house, you don't have to do any vertical mowing because there's nothing to vertical mow at my property or anybody else's property that has a house on it. So the vertical mowing is because of the vacant property owners not maintaining their property, just like the impinging growth. I know I benefit because I can see around it when I'm driving. I get that point. But the impinging growth over the right-of-way into the streets, into the sidewalks, is because they're not maintaining that property. And that's where the city comes in and has to vertically mow that. I get the benefit because I can safely see around it and drive. I get that. But the cost to do that is because they're not maintaining their vacant property.
And I would argue the point that it's just vacant property that has impinging growth into the right of way. Because I see it every
What?
day. There's houses that are on corners where the front is here, the side is all overgrown with pepper trees. There's the estates where they have larger lots, where the house is back set, and it's grown all the way out to the road. So I would not say that as a blanket statement, that it's just vacant parcels that
But it's
need.
that
Right?
25% that
It's
is,
still 25%.
it's that 25% of the parcels that I think is what.
And it may well be that 25%. We didn't really look at
Probably less than that. but-
the impinging growth more, we were looking more at the bottom of the swale.
Thank you for bringing that up, because impinging growth, we addressed, a year to 2 years ago. They asked for a huge increase in the budget, we gave them the increase in the budget. I wanna say it was like $60,000 for that year. I can't remember, but it had to do with impinging growth. Now, we're talking about an entirely different methodology for impinging growth.
You will always have impinging growth.
Yeah.
We always will be pushing back. We will always need that equipment. We still likely have enough equipment to push back the
I'm
impinging
sorry,
growth
let
that
me
we have.
reword my question. I heard, and I may be wrong, is that option one is the only one that addresses impinging growth. I believe we address impinging growth every single year. In fact, we upped the budget the year before last or last year.
Can I, all three options address impinging growth.
Thank you.
It has to do with where they're assessed in the fee. In option 2 and 3, it is assessed in the mowing fee. In option 1, it's assessed in the roads bucket.
And another way of saying this, let me just kind of simplify this as best I can. If you believe every parcel within this city benefits by having cleared and mowed swales for the road and drainage systems, you should choose option 1. If you believe only vacant parcels benefit from us mowing vacant parcels, choose option 2 or 3. If you want to impact people the minimally, option 3 is exactly what you're doing right now. We're just adjusting the base charges. Bills don't go shake up or down if that's the biggest fear. If you think that a large parcel should pay more for mowing than a small parcel, choose option 2. That's it.
I don't pay my bills on what I believe, and that's really what this is about.
But this is a conceptual argument of how these should be charged, because we have to
It's a
rate
con-
design these assessments by legal parameters, and we have to define a benefit criteria.
But we have to be able to explain it to the citizens so that when they get this bill, they completely understand. And we have 5 commissioners here that have been talking about this for over a year, and it seems like it's still not very clear. And that is what the problem is.
It's just they want increases to not really
To make a
increase
system.
the level of service.
I guess my struggle is we came to
No,
this
it's not
the last
even gonna make a
workshop and there was a
system. That's the
consensus
problem.
on
Sure
option
it does.
1, but now it's been dissolved.
But we
They
didn't see the
just said
numbers
that.
at the last one.
Consensus yet.
But I told you at the option 1, it's going to cause people's bills to go
Right,
up.
we didn't see those numbers, and that's why when you attach a dollar figure to a conversation, it changes the conversation every single time.
Understood?
Well, these are now gonna stay the same, so can we get direction on which option we wanna choose, whether it's a hybrid or whether it's 1, 2, or 3?
I'm for 1.
Okay, I have,
I'm for 1.
there's a 1, I'm for 1.
There's your consensus.
Consensus, because I'm not for any of them.
I'm not for,
So option 1, you have direction by consensus.
every single citizen, every single homeowner has now got an increase.
Of $38.
And every
if
vacant
they're-
parcel has a decrease. It makes no damn sense.
Okay, so, we will move on. Do we have any public comment? No? Do we want to do commission communications? Yes, Vice Mayor had something she wanted to go over.
Thank you for remembering. Where is it? Okay, so we were talking about easements earlier, and, sorry. And in the code, and I had the tab, I just forgot to look at it. It says here in the easement, code number 3721D, number 1, such objects that obstruct the easements include but are not limited to swimming pools, wells, trees, and sheds. So we understand that you can't put a shed in the easement. We understand you can't put a well in the easement. We understand you can't put a swimming pool in the easement. But there's the word trees. And that might be what's contributing to the clear cutting in the rear of the parcel. And I'm trying to understand why is trees in there? When trees have been here forever.
I kind of thought the same direction when I saw trees, because that is an area that you could gain that 35% from. But then I got, for the canopy covered, but then I got thinking about it on lunch break. With trees, you got roots. And if there's underground utilities going in, that might be why they're saying no trees in those easements. I don't know.
Why did you
Why are you including trees in the
Frank is
easement?
behind you, by the way.
Because that's,
Yeah.
I underlined it.
Here comes Nicole, she was listening.
Yeah, so I gathered.
Just because they're not here doesn't mean they're not paying attention.
They were in the bullpen warming up.
Say, anybody that doesn't believe that, walk around during budget conversations. You can hear the echo of the commission meetings, because not every computer is timed the same.
We're not sure exactly what the question is again.
So I'm wondering, why is trees included in a forbidden easement area when we're trying to reach a 35% canopy? And it seems like a very logical place to put trees in the rear of the parcel.
For the record, Nicole Galhouse, planning manager. The trees would be obstructing the drainage for the easement. So obviously, this is not a situation where we would require people to clear them necessarily, but they wouldn't be able to plant new trees within those easements.
Okay.
This all came about when someone was planting trees on, I want to say it was Cranberry or over in that particular area. Their trees were not obstructing drainage. In fact, they had created a very nice like wall thing, and we changed the code specifically to allow for trees to be planted in those rights of ways when it did not obstruct the road and drainage. And that was, my God, a long time ago.
Like treescapes?
Yeah.
I had them on one of my property, like the arborvitae. Yeah.
That was what, 04 maybe, or 05? It was when we were trying to create a treescape, but our ordinances wouldn't allow us to. And then we had other people putting things in there right of way, which were not creating a problem to the drainage system, and so we wanted to comply with that.
I think they're convening on an answer.
Are you ready?
Because, I mean, thinking about it, even in this discussion, there is a difference between along the road or along the back or on the sides. I mean, they're all can be viewed differently.
And I think this was drainage easement, wasn't it? Or what is it? What's the
Just
wording?
easement.
Yeah,
Easement.
easement, that's
Just
what it
an
was.
easement.
Because the two easements side by side could have trees in it, so.
All right.
For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. On a standard single-family lot where you have two 6-foot side easements and a 10-foot rear easement, the way that the required stormwater drainage is designed to occur is the water goes down toward the back, down the sides, goes down the back into the rear, up the sides, into the front swales. That's a typical standard lot. That's how the grading drainage plan works and is designed in the city of Northport. When you have a single-family lot that you have a waterway in the back, typically half the water comes to the front, half the water goes to the rear. Having trees in the areas of the easements obstructs the drainage flow. That's why we do not want to have trees in the easements. Along the back, when you're on a waterway or when you're on a drainage right or a retention ditch, and we have to get back in there to do our work, whether it's mowing or regrading our ditch or digging out along a waterway. We cannot have trees in there, so our equipment cannot get through there. That's the reason we don't allow trees in easements.
In our ditch.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Not
that's
in
city.
our ditch, I'm saying on the easement leading up to.
Even a regular easement that is not on an R ditch or is not on a waterway, it's to provide
Clearance to cut,
unobstructed
too.
drainage flow.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I just needed to understand
That's the
why,
reason.
because trees are beneficial for flooding and drainage and all that kind of stuff, so.
15 to 20 feet too. 15 to 20 feet is usually the easement for
The
those
easement on a
big.
regular rear lot, not on a waterway, is 10 feet.
No, I was
It's 20
talking
feet on an R ditch or waterway.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's also to provide clearance so you can get in there and dredge
Yes, ma'am.
those R
Maintenance.
ditches and.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
we
much.
discussed
You're welcome.
that earlier when
Can I
you
have
weren't
my
here.
Sorry, I was a
Just
little.
thought I'd put that out there.
So, thank you, everybody,
Thank you, Mayor,
for
for
coming.
that.
Thanks, staff, for providing stuff. City manager, you have something?
I do. A couple of you, from what I understand, have already received this invitation, but not all of you, which is for a tour of potential options for the expansion of Legacy Trail. That's to say, not all of you have gotten it, but some of you have. I have received an offer for all of you, and I wanted to, one, share it with you. That's how I found out that some of you have, is in looking at this, the person who gave the offer actually said, oh, no, we've already talked to some of your commissioners. Lovely. Prefer that all of them have the option.
Yeah, but we all can't go at one time.
That's what I told them.
That's how I discovered it, because follow-up question was, are you looking as a group or as individuals? They told us, we're willing to do individuals, but we've already talked to some of them. You can imagine the logistical nightmare that creates for me, because I prefer all of you be included on things rather than just one or two of you. So, that being said,
Why can't we all go at one time? You just don't talk voting issues.
really talk, but it's easier if you do go individually, because it takes out the issue of, is anybody talking about something they're not supposed to? It's just a,
Go with us. That's what we used to always do.
There are ways to do it.
Oh, God.
But that being said, clearly.
Do this, can't do that. Just use your damn common sense.
Right, back to it. We are working to arrange them. What I want to know is, do all of you want to do this? It's from the Friends of Legacy Trail, just so we're clear, which is not the county, but it's still our options of two different areas. So if you're interested, we will work with your calendars in the clerk's office to get them scheduled. Like I said, my understanding, I think 2 of you are already scheduled. If the other 3 of you who don't know, which I believe is Commissioner Emmerich, Mayor Hanks, and Commissioner Carasone.
Just to give a little bit more information, it's a 3-hour tour, and I asked if it was
boy.
like.
Oh, I've done that with a Gilligan once.
On the SS
3
minnow.
hours.
3 hours, that's it. Driving
I don't know.
on
They
a
said
bicycle.
They figured 3 hours.
But with going with them, that does not prohibit what we, as a commission, talked about getting with the county.
It does not. That, I just wanted to be, that's why I want to make it clear that this is not the county, because it is, those are 2 separate things. So we are still working to get the.
Yes.
I think you guys already got invited and
Yes.
said yes. The rest
no,
of us
that's-
non-tree huggers, we did
No,
not.
that's not
I'm not
so.
making statements of why some did or didn't. I just know that the 2 of you were invited already, and my plan was to ask all of you, but
Yeah.
You give me the date.
we'll work on getting them scheduled.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Give me the date and time, and then I'll
Yeah,
get
and
back to you.
there's no judgment in why. It's just because it's an outside agency. They can do what they want.
Anything wrong with them emailing me, because it is, I figured everybody else got an email too, because
How
of
would
the
you know?
issue.
Yeah.
Exactly. Had no way of knowing, but I am not confirmed with them, but I definitely want to be confirmed with them.
Yeah, they were gonna check schedules and let me know.
We will take the lead on checking the schedule, getting the schedule. If you don't want to do it, we reach out to each of you individually, you can say no. I just wanted to make it.
Just need more information about it, really.
That's
You know.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, I have something. April Fools!
I love it.
Ask our